All right, I'm gonna talk to you about something that happened the other day. Something that most people probably would have said was not a nice thing to do. I don't really care. I know it was the right thing to do to me in that case. And I'm gonna advocate and recommend that you do the very same thing actually if something like this ever happens to you. And I'm gonna tell you why also. Here's briefly what happened. I was walking outside. I was getting my 10,000 steps in because I have a goal of reaching at least 10,000 steps a day. And as such, I was in a hurry. I didn't have time to stop. I didn't have time to do anything else. And I didn't, and most importantly of all, I didn't have the willingness to give away my time and energy to somebody else. So I ran into an individual that I hadn't seen for quite some time. Now, I remember this individual as a low energy, slow, boring person to hang around. No offense, really. I mean, I don't really know the individual on a personal level. Maybe they're nice, maybe they're not nice. I don't really know. What I do know is that the individual had very, very low and slow energy about them and moved around like a sloth. Look, I could even spot it on their body language. I could even spot it on their walking pace that this was a low energy individual. I just couldn't be around them. So when I was walking like this and I was about to bump into the individual in question, who looked at me and looked at me with a willingness to do a stop and chat, I just said hi and then I walked on. Why? Why? Well, because I didn't have any time and energy to give this individual, and I refused to give this individual of my precious time and energy. Because guess what? You know what that would have done to me? It would have lowered my energy as well, and it would have turned me into this sloth and boring person, right? I just can't be around people like that. Again, no offense. I don't know the individual on a personal level, but I do know the individual from on a social level, let's say. And that's all there is. It actually reminds me of a scene from Curb Your Enthusiasm. I don't know if you guys have watched this show or that show. It's about Larry David and it's about his life. And there's this scene where Larry David and one other guy, I think, they're outside, they're walking on the street, and they're busy. They're on their way to some meeting or some arrangement. I don't really know what it is, and they walk down the street. They spot another individual that they know, and they keep on walking. And this other individual wants to do what Larry calls a stop and chat, right? But Larry doesn't have time for that, so he just keeps on walking. And as Larry and the other individual are walking, the camera shifts to their so that you can see their faces, and you see the fella in the background going going, what the hell? Why didn't he stop? Why didn't he acknowledge my presence? Why wouldn't he stop and do a little stop and chat? And that's what Larry addresses later. I forget the other circumstances. I don't know the exact reason why Larry said he didn't want to do a stop and chat. Probably something because he was busy or because he didn't like the person. Now, just to be clear, there's no animosity from me towards this other individual other than giving of my energy when I'm outside, when I'm busy, when I'm working, when I've got things to do. That offends me. Yes, it offends me. It really does. Look, if I'm busy working, if you're busy working, and if you're on a mission, and you have to slow down and acknowledge someone else and listen to them and what they're doing, and it doesn't exactly match or fit well with your mission, then why would you even bother? Why? Really? Why? This is why I'm filtering people. This is why I'm curating with whom I'm spending my time. And this is why for large parts of my life, I'm actually spending time with myself. But when I am spending time with other people, I'm spending time with people who know me, who understand me, who want to walk in the same direction as me, which is what you should be doing as well. Because it's much better to spend that time on yourself, working hard on improving your life, rather than giving away your time and your energy to somebody else who really even doesn't deserve it, honestly. Now, there's a few things I'd like to discuss, or there's one thing in particular that I'd like to discuss because it's so important to this entire conversation and this entire philosophy of life. Is that, let's say I would have walked and the other guy would have instantly turned and walked in the same direction as I. Then we could have talked, because I didn't mind talking, I didn't mind listening to the fellow. I wouldn't have minded, shall we say, entering their world. Because when I'm walking, I'm keeping the momentum up. And when I'm keeping the momentum up, my energy keeps being on a higher level, which means it's much easier for me to make them jump into my world rather than me having to jump into their world, right? This is about selfishness. This is about being a little bit egotistical. And it's also about being the master of your own life. That's another funny allegory, actually, being the master of your domain. If you watch that Seinfeld episode, you know what master of your own domain means, but that's not what we're talking about here. Anyway, the point is simply this. If you want to live a happy and fulfilled life, why do you give away your time and energy to other people who don't deserve it? No, that doesn't mean that you're never supposed to say hi to people. I do. I do most of the time. And when I do have the time to stop for a chat, I will. But when I don't have the time to stop for a chat, I will not. It's as simple as that. So let's say hypothetically that I run into this other individual and I'm actually standing still. Let's say I'm catching my breath, or I'm seated on a bench, or I'm standing still, and I actually physically have the time to speak to this individual. I will do so, but I will not interrupt my work when it is work. That's really, really important. And that's what so many other people fail to understand. And that's what you need to understand as well. That's what you need to do about your life. You need to understand that your time and energy matters so much that when you're busy doing something, when you're working, when you're improving your life, when you're completing a task or an assignment that needs your total and utter dedication and focus, that's all what matters in the moment. That's how simple life is. Yet so many people refuse to understand that, and they refuse to be part of that philosophy. So, in closing this video, I'll leave you with that. Assume time and control over your own energy and watch how the world turns into a much better place. And let others jump into your world rather than you jumping into theirs, right? Make them follow you on your on your conditions and terms, not theirs. It's that simple. If you want more tips and tricks on how to get your energy up, and you like this way of thinking, then do yourself a favor and subscribe to my email list. The link to do so is below this video in the episode description. Thank you for watching, and I guess I'll see you there.